Our theme this year is soaring to new heights. I mean, just when you say that to yourself, it gives me a feeling of soaring to new heights. That's what we're doing here in this year, 2021 at Agape Bay Area. And then our theme for this month is back to our future. Sounds yummy, doesn't it? Back to our future. And when I was being with Back to Our Future, Spirit said, okay, Verona, here's what it is. Upside down, inside out. Where are you? Back to our future. So, of course, not of course, but I'd like to start us with a joke. First thing I'd like to say is I am not a trained comedian, as you all know. However, I do know that laughter is the very best salve, medicine, balm activity. And it helps me to remind myself and to remind all of us that in these moments of co-creation and enlightenment, as we all come together, we get to be silly. We get to giggle. We get to know that there's playfulness in all of this. So here we go with this joke. So there was a lost dog that strayed into the jungle. Okay, I don't know how this dog got in the jungle, but it strayed into the jungle. Okay, so a lion saw this dog from the distance and said, this guy looks edible. Never seen this kind before. Okay, so the lion starts rushing towards the dog and with menace, like here comes the lion. And let's just call it a female lion because they're the ones who go get the food, actually. So here she comes racing towards this dog, and the dog notices this lion coming, and he doesn't quite know what to do, but he notices he's standing by a pile of bones, okay? And he says real loudly, that was some good lion meat. Okay, so the lion hears the dog say this, and the lion stops and says, whoa, this one might be tougher than he looks. I better leave while I can. And so in the meantime, during the whole activity of this, there's a monkey in a tree watching all of this. Okay, so this monkey decides there's something to benefit from this activity that he has seen. And so he decides to go to the lion and tell the lion, listen, here's what really was going on. Okay, so the monkey jumps on the lion's back, goes and tells the lion. And so the lion says, okay, get on my back. We'll get him together. So they start rushing back towards the dog. The dog sees them. Now, remember, this dog is lost. This dog has no idea where this dog is. This dog is lost. The dog sees them and realizes what's happened and starts to panic. But instead of panicking, a calm comes over the dog, and then he gets another idea and shouts, where the heck is that monkey? I told him to bring me another lion a whole hour ago. Yeah, that's to get us in the place and space of knowing that we can be funny about this, that we can laugh about it. And sometimes feeling lost can be something that we can laugh about. What came for me about this upside down, inside out, where am I, is sometimes we feel lost. Sometimes we feel lost in the past, we feel lost in the present, or we might feel lost in the future because we have released our grasp or our identification with our God placement system, our GPS. And sometimes we can feel lost, and lost can feel funny, but being lost sometimes does not feel funny. And sometimes when we're lost, I believe it's because we're in this limbo of past, present, and future. We're in this space where we don't understand, or we have forgotten that time is truly an illusion. Now, I want to say that this message today, this sharing today, this co-creation, Spirit is having a chuckle with me. She is, because time is something that is one of my biggest learnings. I always want to be on time. I want to be in time. And this has helped me understand, and all of us I see, to know that time is just an illusion. And this illusion of time, sometimes we can shift it or rearrange it in ways that are not to our most beneficial. Like if we get stuck in the past. It's easy to get stuck in the past. It's easy to get stuck in all those things that happened before this very moment right here and right now. And it's easy to drag those things with us right into the present, And a lot of times we're stuck in the past in a place of unforgiveness. And we may not even be able to see. We're not clear. We don't have clarity about it being a space and place of unforgiveness. However, it can be a space and place of unforgiveness. And then that unforgiveness comes, what comes with unforgiveness, or one of the biggest components of unforgiveness, is judgment. So now we're judging something that happened in the past, and we might be holding it in a place of unforgiveness unbeknownst to us. So that's one of the ways that we can really get lost in this, what we might call the time-space continuum. This is one of the ways we can just be kind of wandering around in it and not really know where we are, even though when we wake up in the morning, we get up, we brush our teeth, we do our prayer and meditation, and we know that we're here. However, we can get stuck in the past. And a lot of times being stuck in the past has a great influence over what's happening to us now. Or we can get stuck in the future. Now, you're probably thinking, well, how do I get stuck in the future, Reverend Verona, if I haven't been there? Well, one of the things about the future is worrying. I heard, I'm not sure who said this, but this is wonderful to know that worrying is mortgaging our future. Listen, I mean, just be with that. Worrying is mortgaging our future because it's all about, well, this could possibly happen and that could possibly happen and this could go wrong and that could go wrong. So sometimes worry also has us in a place of, in this kind of nebulous place in the time-space continuum, and we could still feel lost in that without really knowing that we feel lost. Because also sometimes I have done this before, and I don't know if any of you have, but I have. When this happens, such and such will happen. Okay, I'm just going to get transparent here. When I lose 15 pounds, all of my life is going to be a success. Yeah, well, yeah. And that's the truth about me. Sometimes I have thought that. Or, I don't know, when blank happens, this happens. I mean, you can fill it in for yourself. You may have one, you may not have one. However, that is also our way of, to me, of being lost or just kind of wandering around in the future. Because nothing can happen now because it's linked to the future. Okay, so this whole time-space continuum, this whole being in the past, the present, and the future, this whole, where am I? Upside down, inside out. What's happening? Not just what's happening, but where am I? Upside down, inside out. I was realizing that part of what this is about is our choice of presence. So I was thinking about this and being with a lot of the stories that I know, and actually I'm going to, and it's a story that I heard a long time ago. And this is a story about a monk and a grasshopper I'd like to share with you. And some of you probably know this because it's a story that's been for a long time. However, it has relevance in this moment because there is no time. So this monk was sitting down doing meditation, sitting on the pad, blanket, doing meditation. Okay. And there's a little grasshopper that comes along. And this grasshopper comes along and is a little bit away from the monk. Okay. And the monk is, meditating, eyes closed, hands in the position. And then the monk opens up one eye because the monk can feel the presence of the grasshopper and sees this grasshopper. And just the monk closes his eyes again, and the grasshopper is still sitting there. And finally, the next time the monk opens up one eye, the grasshopper says, "What are you doing?" to the monk. The grasshopper gets comfortable to get close enough to the monk to say, "What are you doing?" And the monk says, "I'm meditating." And the grasshopper says, "Well, what's the reason you're meditating?" And the monk says, "For mindfulness." And the grasshopper says, What good is that? What good is meditation? And the monk says, well, the meditation is as good as you'd like it to be. And so then the monk invites the grasshopper to meditate. So the grasshopper decides, okay, I'm going to participate in this. And so the grasshopper jumps onto a blade of grass and sits there, assumes the position for whatever a grasshopper's position is, bring those two little legs together. And a few moments go by and the grasshopper opens his eyes, looks at the monk and says, I don't know if it's working here. And the monk just doesn't say anything. And so the grasshopper jumps to the next blade of grass, sits on the next blade of grass for a few more moments. Grasshopper is sitting there. All the things that happen in meditation are happening with the grasshopper, and the monk is still there holding the consciousness. Grasshopper opens his eyes again and says, it's not working on this blade of grass either. Jumps to another blade of grass. Now the grasshopper closes his eyes, sits there. Monk is still there. They're both in the meditative state, and the grasshopper opens its eyes and says to the monk, now he's closer to the monk, it's not working on this blade of grass either. And the monk slowly opens his eyes and says, it works if you work it. So the reason I brought that story in, that story came to me, is sometimes this is what happens in our lives. At least it's happened in my life. I'm jumping from blade of grass to blade of grass to blade of grass to blade of grass. Oh, this isn't working. Oh, that isn't working. Oh, this may not be working. That may not be working. Instead of being in a place of the realization that it works if we work it. You know, this time-space continuum, it opens itself up into the no-thingness that it is if we accept that, if we know that, if we're in a place of clarity about that. It really, really, really does. You know, Johnny Coleman, Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman, is one of my sheroes, and she's real popular for saying, it works if you work it. We all know this, that it works if we work it. However, the working it, so to speak, the working it to be in our spaces of the highest enlightenment involves us being present, us being in the now, us being in a place of mindfulness. And, you know, I want to break down this mindfulness. So I realize that our mind is an avenue of awareness. That's all our mind is. Our mind is an avenue of awareness, and that avenue of awareness can fill itself full with the consciousness that is ours, and consciousness brings form in our lives. Okay, so our minds as an avenue are an avenue of awareness, and fullness is abundance. So we are in the state of mindfulness, an avenue of aware abundance. So when we are in the state of mindfulness, we are in that avenue of awareness or aware abundance. So I was being with this and thinking about the monk and the grasshopper. And I want you to know the grasshopper was my favorite insect as a girl. And I used to keep them as pets. Just a little quirky aside. So that's why the monk and the grasshopper spoke to me. However, thinking about all this and thinking, okay, so in our lives, in what way do we allow ourselves to retreat from any misdirection of being in the now? We get to use mindfulness. We get to be in that avenue of abundant awareness. However, in what ways can we follow it through? You know, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience, and the human experience is our learning part. The human experience is what we, before we incarnated here, before we each chose a day like Matt chose today, before we incarnated here and said, okay, here we go, here I come, Earth, and here are my lessons. So I was thinking, in what ways can we make this really practical in the lives of spirit that each one of us lives? So first thing that came to me is that being in the now is a precious space of soul retrieval. Being in the now is a very precious and sacred space of soul retrieval. That is to say, we get to retrieve our soul from whatever space or place we feel we have decided it's gone on to, past or future, because this is all about our perspective and what we choose to believe. What we choose to believe. So that what showed up for me for some ways that we can stay in the now. 3 ways showed up for ways we can stay in the now. And I love that we get to practice what we're doing. It's just not a head thing, and it's just not a heart thing, that we get to involve ourselves in the entire thing. So one of the first ways that we can keep ourselves in the now, that we can stay in that place, that precious sacred space of soul retrieval, is claim the good of life. And claiming the good of life involves that what it involves is we first get to render the past powerless over us. You know that I take dominion over my life? Well, the past is really powerless over us. And that's something, let's just breathe that in. Because that's really a very, very, very big statement, humongous statement. However, the past is powerless over each one of us. We get to accept that. We get to own that. We get to know that the past is powerless over us. And we get to plunge into a space of absolute compassion so that we can forgive anything that in the past has been holding us. We get to release the conditioning of any past happenings. And the way we do that is claim the good of life. And how I describe this is we get to know and claim and accept and identify with the omnis of life, which is each one of us is omniactive. Each one of us is omnipresent. Each one of us is omniscience. And each one of us is omnipotence. And as Reverend Joan added, each one of us is omni-loving. Do you know that about yourself? Because where each of us is, God is. Spirit can only do for us what Spirit can do through us. Each of us is a vessel of the divine. So if we allow ourselves to claim the good of life, the omnis, what I like to call the omnis of life, and know that these omnis are looking for a way for their inflow and outflow into the world through and as each one of us. So that's one of the first ways we get to allow ourselves to stay in the now. Second way that came for me is take a new design in life. And the take a new design in life came because, as a result, partly of the reading A New Design for Living by Ernest Holmes and Willis Kinnear. And in taking a new design of life, we can realize and accept that the unlimited mental acceptance, if we have unlimited mental acceptance, that we get to give the law of mind direction. You know, the law acts in the way that we direct it to act. The law acts in the way of the mental equivalence that we set out for it to fill up, to make into form. So if we allow ourselves to take a new design in living, and be that leap of faith in the new design in living, then consciousness can take any form that we desire, long for, accept, own, or clear about any desire that's coming through us. So this second way is just take a new design of living. Just allow ourselves to take a new design of living. And the third way that showed up for me is anticipate the best of existence. And you're probably thinking, well, okay, that sounds great. In what ways do I get that to happen? And this is really great. We get to what came from me, or what poured through me, is we get to be a transparency of spirit, which means experience all the things that are happening in our life as passing through. You know that Bible verse, this too shall pass. Well, it's not just some old-fashioned saying. Things in our life pass through. They come, they give us our opportunities for growth, and then they pass on through. Okay, so if we become transparent and experience life as passing through, then we allow ourselves to have the feeling of lightness and peace of the spiritual realm that resides within and as each one of us. Don't forget, the spiritual realm is inside each one of us. It is the truth of and as each one of us. And the ways that we get to anticipate the best, besides being a transparency of spirit, is we get to do our spiritual practices. We have spiritual practices that are part of our Agape family, part of our Agape principles, our spiritual practices. And I know you all know them. Of course, I'm going to say them. Prayer, meditation, journaling, the spiritual practices that we all get to participate in. And visioning, of course. I knew there was one other, and visioning, of course. So we get to be our spiritual practices. And the reason I say we get to be them is when life gets going upside down, inside out, and topsy-turvy, we get to be our spiritual practices. We get to know that our spiritual practices ground us and center us and keep us exactly in the truth of who and what each one of us is. So these three ways that we get to stay in the now, these three ways we get to stay in the now, once again, claim the good of life. You know, claim it, name it. You know, a lot of times when we do our spiritual mind treatments, one of the terms we use is I claim it and I name it. Well, we get to claim and name the good of life. We get to remember that the past is powerless in our lives, that we get to let it go. We get to dissolve it and dissipate it into the nothingness from whence it came, never to return again in that form. So once again, we get to claim the good of life. We get to take a new design in living. We get to know that the new design of living, in the new design of living, we direct the law of mind. And in the direction of the law of mind, the consciousness that comes through in the mental equivalence makes form. It has no choice. The law has no choice. Got it? The law has no choice. The law does what we say, because the law is spirit itself, and each one of us is the incarnation of source energy, spirit itself, God, Allah, Buddha, Jehovah Jireh, whatever names we'd like to use, whatever appellations we'd like to put on it. And the other way is to anticipate the best of existence. And as we do our spiritual practices in anticipating the best of existence, we get to be transparent so that everything that flows through our lives, we know that it's just going on through. It's passing on through. So I was being with this, And one of the things that showed up for me actually was something from the book of Revelations, because as you all know, I do love the Bible. I'm not saying I read it every single day, but I do love it as a manual for living. And what showed up for me from Revelations is something that's very important. This calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God who remain faithful in the Christ consciousness. So we get to remember this calls for patient endurance in our lives. Yeah, let it soak in. This calls for patient endurance in our lives. So now you're thinking, all right, this sounds great. This sounds good. I have these, tenants. I can get up and go today. I can do this. And how's that working in your life, Reverend Verona? How's that working for you? So I was being with this as all week long, as Reverend Cindy will tell you. Reverend Cindy knows, Reverend Joe knows, all of us who are called to the ministry know, is that when you get ready to, when you're speaking about something, it starts working you all week long. It gets a hold of you and it whips you around in love and it swaddles you and it caresses you. However, all week long I've been thinking, so what's the example in my life? How is it that this is work? In what ways is this working in my life? And so it finally showed up around midnight last night, actually. And the example in my life is that I have been concentrating on, focusing on, praying about relationships in my life, all the relationships that I have in my life. And then it became really clear to me, the main relationship that I have in my life, that you have in your life, that we all have in our life, is the relationship with Spirit. That's the one relationship, because all the other relationships are an outpicturing of and an unfolding of the relationship that we have with Spirit. So I was with this last night. It woke me up at midnight. I love the way when Spirit wakes me up and says, no, this is not a potty break. This is me and you having a conversation. So what became clear to me is how this is working in my life, in my relationship with Spirit, which is, of course, a holographic expression of my relationship with everything and every other being. Is first, claim the good in life. So I realized that when I accept that I am Spirit, when I accept that I am exactly what Robin Rice Olmsted so lovingly led us into in meditation, God is, I am. When I realize that, or when I realize that I'm being exactly what Patricia told us in the very first song, it's all good because it's all God and that is me. So I realized for me that I'm claiming the good of life and allowing in my relationship with Spirit, allowing myself to know that the past is powerless over me, and allowing myself to know that really, as the power and the presence of Spirit that I am, as the living, breathing expression of Spirit on the planet, I am all the omnis: omnipresent, omniactive, omniscient, omnipotent, and omniloving, because I am that I am. God is, I am. And so the next tenet that came through for me is take a new design in living. I realize in my relationship with Spirit, I'm going to own up to it. Sometimes have not a tendency, but I might fall backwards in knowing that the law of mind can only do to me what I do for me what I allow it to do through me, and that the law of mind actually is the consciousness that makes form. And so in my relationship with Spirit, I got to realize that I get to know this in all ways and in all times, that I get to actually take a new design, and I get to know that unlimited mind acceptance that is within and as me, really, as in my relationship with Spirit. The third one, of course, is anticipate the best of existence. And this anticipating the best of existence is about the transparency. Of course, now my spiritual practices, I love them. I do them all the time. I do them regularly. They are the foundation of who and what I am, I believe, other than expression of the one power and the one presence. However, anticipate the best of existence, to know that I am doing this in tandem with Spirit, to know that of mine own self, I do nothing. That is happening in tandem with Spirit, and that Spirit and I have a love affair going on here. Yeah. That Spirit and I have a love affair going on, that we are one another's passion and power and tango and togetherness and commitment and so much more in and as one another. That I get to anticipate the very best of my existence as a result of my owning and identifying and accepting that I'm in it with Spirit. Spirit is in it with me. that spirit is the truth of who and what I am. So what showed up for me in the middle of the night, not in the middle, but at night last night, is that as I allow myself to be a transparency for everything passing through, that this last tenant, which is anticipate the best of existence, that all these three things together allow me to stay in the now. All these things together in my relationship with spirit, in my relationship with the one, allow me to stay in the mindfulness of spirit. Allow me to know that my mind is an avenue of awareness and that is filled to overflowing with abundance. And also knowing this gets me to know that the relationships that I've been praying on, the relationships with my family units, the relationships with every single individual I encounter, my relationships with those whom I may feel are of an unlike mind to me, that I get to know that each one of these relationships is an expression of, is an illumination of, it is the radiance of the one relationship. The relationship I have in and with and as spirit, because spirit is who and what I am, and spirit is who and what each one of us is. Just like Robert prayed in his prayer, actually, there's only one of us here. Or like Reverend TJ referred to last week, we are a cell in the organism of the Most High Spirit, God, source energy. Each one of us. That we get to remember that we get to know that we get to absolutely understand and know upside down, inside out, where am I? I am grounded in spirit. I am the truth of the one power. I am the now of spirit. I am that I am. So here's my challenge for you today. You know, I always like to give us a challenge. Will you RSVP to Spirit's invitation to stay in the now? Will you RSVP to nurturing our wisdom? Staying in the now. That's the question. Each one of us is the answer.